came off the board. How about
Hey, folks, welcome to another version of Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. We're live on the third day of the 2021 NFL Draft. The Steelers have made, well, we planned on doing this after the Steelers made their first two picks, but they had a little bit of a surprise for us. They went with three picks in the first two rounds of the 2021 NFL Draft, moving up into the fifth round with a trade. I'll just quickly recap the three picks here, and then we'll get into some analysis. Joined as always by Nick Farabaugh, SteelersNow.com. And so the three picks here today are a couple of Aggies: Texas A&M offensive tackle Dan Moore Jr., Texas A&M inside linebacker Buddy Johnson, and then the surprise pick. The Steelers traded their 2022 fourth-round pick for a fifth-round pick in this year's draft to take Wisconsin defensive lineman Isaiahh Loudermilk. Nick, we'll start at the beginning. Dan Moore, to me, was one of these guys towards the end of, but certainly included in the group of tackles that made this class so deep. And you know, talk to me about his upside. You know, he's a longtime starter at A&M, started for 3 years at left tackle, also played a little bit of guard, a little bit of right tackle. Seems like he's experienced, seems like he's versatile, but what's his upside? Is he a potential future starter for this team?
Yes, he is. And I think what makes me really, really impressed with what Dan Moore does, it's not just the physical tools, it's how he's reshaped himself since coming from high school. He was a big-time guy coming out of high school, and by big, I mean very large man. He kind of reworked his body, more chiseled, much more compact now. Think Zach Banner when we're talking about this. He had weight issues. He's reworked himself, and his improvement from last year to this year was phenomenal. This guy's a hard worker. He started 3 years on the line for Texas A&M. He's been a stalwart there. He's experienced. He's got great footwork. Now, he's not a powerful guy like a Kendrick Green was, but he's a zone guy. He's more athlete. He's lengthy. He can play at left tackle, right tackle, slip inside to either guard spot, has experience at both spots. This is a guy that has starting upside. I don't think he's starting year one because he has to work a little bit more on his hands, a little bit more to clean up some things on the footwork side of things. But I think, you know, if Adrian Clem can get that out of him, and we'll see how good Clem is as a coach, I think, with Moore, because Moore has improved. As I've said, he's got the work ethic. This is a guy that's a little raw, but he's willing. And that's exactly the type of guys the Steelers have worked with in the past. See Marcus Gilbert, see Villanueva, you know, all those guys that they developed in from UDFAs. Those guys were raw but had tools and were developed because they were hard workers. Moore's in the same vein. So I think as long as Clem can put good coaching in, I think Moore could start next year. In fact, not this year, but 2022. I think he could be the starting 2022 left tackle.
I think that's probably the rosier end of the projection. I think the big thing for Moore is that he provides them a real immediate ability to be a backup tackle this year. I mean, he is a project as a starter, but I think given his level of experience, you know, playing left tackle for 3 years in the SEC, if they have an injury, you know, Zach Banner coming off ACL surgery, let's not call it implausible that they have an injury at that tackle position. You know, I could see the same thing happening that happened at guard last year, where Moore gets a shot and kind of runs with it. I just think because of his above the head play and his experience, he's not going to be overwhelmed by that situation. And this is not a group behind the start. I mean, listen, I don't think it's a very good starting offensive line, but there's no one really behind their group of starters that has upside. And so anyone I think that they can bring in that provides both immediate backup help, upside, and potential future starter, I think that's a good pick. It was certainly a position of need that I thought they really should have addressed in the first 2 days, but I think they did a fair job here of getting a good player at really what was maybe the draft's deepest position at tackle. There were so many that they passed up on when they went tight end and center in day two. And so I think if they hadn't gotten one, it really would have been a case of some FOMO there. But they stay in Texas A&M in College Station. They go from Moore to Johnson, and we'll allow those of you with a sophomoric sense of humor to take a chuckle there. Buddy Johnson, the inside linebacker from Texas A&M. And I got to talk to Jerry Osowski a little bit about Buddy Johnson just a minute ago. And I was really impressed with the way he broke down the player with an amount of honesty that you don't always get from a coach that just drafted someone and obviously wants to paint them in a fairly good light. Look, Buddy Johnson, is a very good athlete. I think that's the first thing, is that for his position, he's a bigger guy. He's not Devin Bush sized, closer in size to a Vince Williams, but a very good athlete. But his tape in pass protection, it needed work. But I think Jerry O was very, cut and dry and said, look, we want a guy first and foremost that's going to move downhill and stop the run. And then after that, we look for athletic tendencies. And he has the kind of athletic tendencies, that kind of sparky athlete that they think they can make into a good pass coverage player. And they don't have an immediate need for him to step in and play a lot right now. Jerry said this year he's going to be a special teamer, and he's going to look, learn, and listen. And so that gives the Steelers the ability to have an immediate impact on special teams, increase the depth at that position, get a potential future starter if they're able to work out those pass coverage needs, but their pass coverage needs based on technique more than they are based on a lack of athletic ability that is a much more difficult projection.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I actually like Buddy Johnson. I think obviously there were guys on the board. Cam McGrone, Dylan Moses was on the board, Garrett Wallow. Those guys were on the board, but you look at Moses, the knee injuries are obviously of concern, and then McGrone also is inexperienced and had a torn ACL this year. So it makes me think there's a few things that set Buddy Johnson apart. One, he had the green dot for 2 years down there at College Station. He was the signal caller. He got everyone aligned, very vocal. I think this is very clearly they're trying to project forward. This is Vince Williams' heir. I think that's kind of the thought process here. They're trying to get a communicator in the room. Devin Bush, for as instinctive as he is, for as physical as he is, he's a quiet guy. He's a quiet guy. So Buddy Johnson is probably going to be the Vince Williams of the future, if you will. And the thing is, he's more athletic than Vince ever was. Even young Vince, he's more athletic. He can zoom from sideline to sideline. He's a hard hitter. He's a thumper. Has very much the same type of stuff that you look with Devin Bush. He's not as twitchy or as explosive as Devin Bush is downhill, but he's got the similar traits to Devin Bush, where he's aggressive, really plays with reckless abandon, and he's just hot motor sideline to sideline. Has experience as the main coverage guy, can man up tight ends and running backs. Still has to grow in that area, but it's more so not because of his athletic concerns. There are no athletic concerns with Buddy Johnson. He's an all-around great athlete. The concerns with Buddy Johnson are his eyes and his processing. I think route combos kind of get him twisted up, and that's really where his issues come from in coverage. I think Devin Bush was the same way coming out. So, listen, I think this is like Devin Bush light type of deal, and I think Buddy Johnson actually is a really good pick for the Steelers. I like the fit. Again, there are other guys that I like better on my board, but I will not knock the Buddy Johnson pick. I think it's a solid pick. I think he has starting upside. It's just going to be can you develop him? And Olszewski has historically been able to get the most out of his inside backers. So I don't really have many questions that this will be any different.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the question mark for me, and we talked a lot about inside linebackers and need for this team. We talked about them taking it with the very first pick. But most of the types of inside linebackers we talked about are the Devin Bush types, the guys that you can see stepping into immediate sub-package roles. I think it's pretty clear Buddy Johnson is not that. He is a Vince Williams replacement type of player. And so where does this fit into their needs? And was this a good fit for their need there at the end of the fourth round?
Well, it shows me that they're clearly comfortable with Vince and Spillane. I think they're very comfortable riding into the season with them. I think Spillane has shown enough to prove that. Again, they're on 1-year deals. Buddy Johnson feels like a second-year guy to me, that they're expecting to step up next year. Now, we talked about guys like Cox, JOK, that we thought could be dime backer. That we haven't seen them get a dime backer yet. That's an interesting point. Buddy Johnson's probably not going to be that. But what he does is he gives them, I think, an upgrade at the backup Mac spot to Devin Bush. So I think he if Bush gets hurt, I expect it to be Johnson Williams, not Spillane Williams. I think Spillane will back up Vince, and I think Johnson will back up Bush. And I think that's kind of exclusively what you're going to see. It adds a little bit more athleticism. UG3 can't be trusted to stay healthy with his back as a chronic issue. Marcus Allen really doesn't fit as a linebacker. They try to extend his career. I think he might move back to safety now, back to strong safety, because they don't really have much safety depth. It's him and Antoine Brooks and some other guys kind of off the PS. So he fits in there. It does kind of give them a little bit of a rut in that room, though. I mean, they have Allen, they have Johnson, they have Spillane, Williams, Bush, and also don't forget Miles Killebrew was also signed.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of inside linebackers there for a team that doesn't play that many at once.
Yeah, and Killebrew and Allen are those tweener safety linebacker types. So I almost think perhaps whoever wins the dimebacker spot might make the roster out of those guys. It wouldn't surprise me if Killebrew or Allen or Brooks are the dimebacker at this point. That might. I
guess that we should also sort of, speak into the conversation here. Ulysses Gilbert has had significant injury issues, and whether or not he ever kind of gets that figured out, I guess at this point is now a fair question.
Absolutely, that's a huge part of it. I think if UG3 had worked out, we wouldn't even really be talking about. Again, I think right now it's a backup for Devin Bush. They needed another athlete. They couldn't trust Marcus Allen on a down-to-down basis. He just wasn't big enough to bang around in the box. Buddy Johnson is. I think that's kind of exactly what they get. I think that with Buddy Johnson, they get a guy that can come in, stop the run, that can come in and really bang around down there low, and he's a little bit more of a bigger guy. But again, he's a guy that can back up Bush, and I think they wanted that security. If Devin Bush gets hurt, now the defense doesn't necessarily fall apart because they don't have the coverage linebacker. And I think, by the way, Jason Pinnock just went to New York.
I just saw that.
Yeah, off the board. Jason Pinnock just off the board. Good for him. I think that's a good landing spot. Went a little earlier than I expected. Did you expect Pinnock to go before Hamlin and Ford? Wow.
Ford maybe. Hamlin, no chance. But I did expect Pinnock to get drafted.
Also before Twyman. Third Pitt player off the board is Jason Pinnock. Wow. Cool. I'm glad for him. But yeah, Buddy Johnson, I think, just gives them some extra insurance there. For a fourth-round pick at 140, which is essentially an early fifth at that point, good pick in my opinion. I like it.
All right, let's move to the real fifth-round pick as the Steelers gave up their 2022 fourth to move up, trading to Miami. Half their picks in this draft have been traded to Miami for a fifth-round pick this year, and they take Isaiahh Loudermilk, defensive end, Wisconsin. We were waiting for the Zoom, then we decided to do this live, and so I missed the Zoom, but I saw the highlights there. It seems like they're going to ask him to put some weight back on. He's 6'6". He played last season at 285, cut down to 275. Looks like they want him to go back up to be a 5-technique 3-4 defensive end. I didn't scout this player because I didn't have 3-4 defensive end at all on our list of needs anywhere. Nick, what can you tell me about Isaiahh Loudermilk, and why does this pick make any sense?
I mean, Isaiahh Loudermilk is a guy that when you look at him, there's a lot of concerns here with Isaiahh Loudermilk. First, the athletic profile. It's not promising. He wasn't explosive. He wasn't quick. He's not really going to have a lot of range if you were moving him to outside backer, which they're not. Thank goodness they just rebutted that, and luckily it seems like he's going to move to –
Carl Dunbar just said he's going to play on the defensive line, 5-tech, or maybe even farther inside, which at 275 is a bit of a stretch, but we'll see.
He might be talking about maybe as a 3-tech in that regard.
Yeah.
No, I can't see him taking nose reps. That's got to be Carlos Davis's job to lose on the backup nose. So, he's a guy that also, and this is the really worrying thing for me, it's not just the athletic profile. We've seen Carl Dunbar work magic before. He's a very good defensive line coach. We've seen him mold guys that aren't even that athletic into something. Isaiah Buggs has improved. He's not a great athlete. Isaiah Buggs has improved his hands. well and probably reached the pinnacle of his ceiling, quite honestly, at this point. So Loudermilk is a guy that could be decent, but the process behind the pick is awful. You don't trade a future fourth. This is pure projection. It's pure projection. He's 274. He's going to have to get up to 295, 300 probably to play 5-tech comfortably. I mean, I get that there's this trend of lighter defensive ends, but I mean, that's really light, even for modern times. He's a guy that I don't know if he's going to get on the field very early. If he's a rotational guy, he's not beating out Chris Wormley in year one. It's pretty hard to see that. He probably is going to be the sixth inactive, right? I mean, you would think he's probably going to.
I'm not sure he makes the team. I mean, he's going to have to beat out Isaiah Buggs and Henry Mondu, who I didn't think were that bad last year.
I think he has to. You don't. I mean, they gave up a future for.
They cut 4th-round picks before. I mean,
they have, but that would just be foolish. It would be foolish. But you're not wrong. He might not make the roster. And it's going to be an uphill climb. But I will say this: they of that group, Wormley, Henry Mondu, Isaiah Buggs, and you can throw Davis in there because he can kind of play both spots. I don't really think there's a guy that they see as a potential future starter. There's a lot of rotational guys. There's some guys that have varying levels of comfort if there's an injury. I'm not sure any of those guys has any starter ability. I guess this is a project where they're looking like, okay, if this all works out, Isaiahh Loudermilk was a starter in a 3-4 defensive end role at a high-level college in Wisconsin. I also want to talk about that. Every single pick now, 6 picks, 3 Big Ten, 3 SEC. That trend loud and clear from the Steelers. If it works out, he can be a potential starter, a potential future Cam Hayward replacement in the mold of a lot of other guys that found at around this spot in the draft, like an Aaron Smith, say. That's a fair best-case scenario projection. I just don't think the value was there at the pick, and I don't think this was a need at all. I mean, I didn't think D-line was a huge need, and clearly they view it differently. They clearly thought they needed another guy on the D-line. I don't know what he's going to do. Like, how does he fit into their odd fronts? Like,
how does he make this team better this year? I think that's and look, I don't think, and we both like the Johnson and Moore picks, but I don't think either of them makes this team better this year unless some significant guys either underperform or get injured. And they have these big holes in other places, corner, just totally untouched.
Well, clearly, I tweeted this out. Clearly, they are confident in James Pierre. I mean, they have to be. They have to be. And now, obviously, we haven't seen what they'll do otherwise. They could sign someone off the street and maybe surprise us with like Richard Sherman, in which case.
I mean, they need a rotational edge, I think, a lot more than they needed a rotational 5 technique, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I think
even gets to that.
If you're talking about just guys to play in rotation, you can't play edge rushers and defensive linemen every down. Like, they need to be rotated out. But I like Mondu and Buggs and Wormley and Davis a lot more than I like the guys behind Watt and Highsmith, which is basically Cassius March and a bunch of random practice squad dudes. Like, that was a far bigger need. And so
I have to think they're going to go to free agency to attack that. I have to.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that group. It's actually fair. Yesterday, Jabal Sheard is out there, I think. There's a couple other guys, Justin Houston, I believe. So, I mean, like, you can get one. But man, I don't know. I think
for a 1-year deal, I'd bring in Justin Houston in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And so I think they can maybe make that work, but this is a curious use of resources here. Would you agree
I don't
with
get
that?
it. A future fourth for a rotational 5-tech. I don't get it. Now, and the reason I say I don't even know if he's going to work in their odd fronts. Because if you play, they have that bear front, obviously, where they put guys at the 4-eye and they have to take on double teams. Loudermilk has no weight or lower mass to do so. He has
got to get up to 290 at least to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
exactly.
More.
but I watched his tape, and he was consistently getting washed out by double teams because he didn't have the lower body mass to do it. Take on double teams. It really worries me about the fit. I don't know how he fits into their bear front, and they run their bear front a lot against teams like Baltimore, who are power running teams, and they obviously face Baltimore twice a year, so that's concerning to me. I don't know exactly how he fits in. I mean, he's going to have this. Even I'll say this: even if the result turns out that Loudermilk is maybe he is the future starter. Let's say that's best case scenario. Carl Dunbar molds him, and he's a two-gapping 305-pounder that replaces.
He turns into Aaron Smith. Let's just say that he turns into Aaron Smith.
Yeah, the process behind the pick is awful. So the result, if you're just doing results-based analysis, you're going to get burned more. If the process behind the pick is bad, this is a guy that has a history of knee injuries that is concerning. It flared up again this year, and it caused him to miss the last game of the season. With Wisconsin, he's missed, I think, a total of 7 games and had 2 surgeries on the same knee. It's definitely a concern there. He's not a great athlete. So, he's a 274-pound guy that didn't test very well. He's complete projection, and you give up a 4th for him. I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me if Loudermilk was there. Loudermilk might have been there at 216. He very well might have been there.
I saw several places that had him projected to go undrafted. I don't think that's unreasonable.
I mean, it's crazy to me. Now, maybe he was known more obviously around the league as someone that the league liked more than we did. But even then,
they didn't send it's not like Carl Dunbar was at Wisconsin's pro day. It's not like this is a guy that they were super in on, from the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a concerning pick for me. I mean, I don't get it. It's Loudermilk has a ton of projection. The process behind the pick to me, with so many needs at corner, at edge, you could have drafted. I would have rather had a safety at this point. I mean,
well, speaking of which, Shaun Wade.
Yeah, he went to the Ravens.
Corner safety goes to Baltimore instead. Certainly would have, to me, would have been a better value for the pick. Would have better fit a need.
That's what I thought.
And would have made the team better this year.
Yeah,
the old hat trick of better in every way.
Yeah, I mean, I would.
Love Ohio State guys and had Colbert and Tomlin there. Now, maybe they didn't like his pro day, and maybe that's it. He's a guy that clearly fell down from where his projection was for a reason, but still.
Yeah, I thought that's who they traded up for when they did. I thought it was for Shaun Wade. I thought they jumped teams. There were DB needed teams behind him. I thought they went up to get Shaun Wade, and I said, okay, that makes sense. I would have been ecstatic with the Shaun Wade pick with that. He'd be worth that. But Loudermilk, it's just he's not a great prospect. He's all projection. He has medical questions, which is even more concerning to me. I mean, I don't get it. Loudermilk is. It's not the worst pick I've ever seen Kevin Colbert make, but it's certainly up there. He has every year he gives us one pick where we're like, what in the world are you thinking, Kevin? This is the one this year.
It's the 5th round pick a lot too. That seems to be a thing.
Trust me. Yeah, the Steelers' history of 5th round picks are a graveyard. It is pretty much a graveyard. So that's why he's probably traded them away the past few years. for Chris Wormley. Who else did he trade away for? Like J.J. Wilcox.
One was in the Minka trade. That was this year's 5th.
Yeah,
in the Minka
trade. That too. So
well, let's leave things there. We've got 3 more picks. We'll come back live again on the channel here to talk about those at the end of the draft. And if you got a question, comment, leave it here on the YouTube channel. We'll pick it up when we get back. And I'll get back to scribbling the words there on the website. Nick, thanks for joining me. And we'll be back more when the Steelers make their final 3 picks. Or will they be the final 3 picks? Maybe they're coming with another trade. We'll see of the 2021 NFL draft as it continues on this final day here on Saturday. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.